Maria Santos had been invisible for 10 years. Every night at 6 p.m., she'd push her cleaning cart through Blackwood Industries, emptying trash cans and mopping floors, while executives rushed past her without a glance. She knew their secrets, their affairs, their lies, their fears. But they didn't know hers. They didn't know she had a business degree. They didn't know she'd once dreamed of running a company instead of cleaning one. And they definitely didn't know that the dying CEO she'd been talking to late at night was about to change her life forever. Before we dive into this story, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This story gets wild, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Now let's get into it. The lawyer's voice echoed through the conference room like a death sentence. James Blackwood has left controlling interest in Blackwood Industries, 51% of all shares, to Maria Santos. Maria stared at her hands, calloused from 10 years of scrubbing floors, unable to process the words. $4 billion, 5,000 employees, an empire built by a man who'd seen her when everyone else looked through her. "This is fraud," Victoria Blackwood's voice cut through the shocked silence. "My father wasn't in his right mind. The cancer—" "Mr. Blackwood was evaluated by 3 psychiatrists," the lawyer interrupted. "The will is legally sound." Victoria's eyes found Maria across the table, and the hatred there was pure and cold. "You manipulated a dying man. You stole my inheritance." "I didn't steal anything." "Then step aside." Victoria leaned forward. "Take a settlement and walk away before you embarrass yourself trying to run a company you know nothing about." Maria thought about James Blackwood, dying alone in his office 3 weeks ago, asking her one last question. If you could change one thing about this company, what would it be? She'd answered honestly, "I'd make people matter more than profit margins." He'd smiled, typed something into his computer, and said, "Then do it." "No," Maria said quietly. "I'm not walking away." Across the table, a man Maria had never noticed before spoke for the first time. "Then we'll make sure you fail." His name was Alex Sterling, 36, VP of Strategy, Harvard MBA, old money family, everything Maria wasn't. He'd been leaning against the wall during the will reading, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Now he stepped forward, and Maria understood why she hadn't noticed him before. He'd been too still, too controlled, radiating the kind of contained power that made you forget to breathe. "The board meets Monday," Alex continued, his voice carrying the weight of authority Maria didn't possess. "We'll vote on whether to accept this arrangement." "You can't override the will," the lawyer said. "No, but we can make Ms. Santos's position untenable until she chooses to leave voluntarily." Alex's eyes met Maria's, and something electric passed between them. Recognition, challenge. "Nothing personal, but you're not qualified, and this company is too important to become someone's learning experiment." "My father trusted her." Victoria's voice dripped with sarcasm. Clearly, his judgment was impaired. "Or," Maria said, standing on shaking legs, "he saw something you didn't." Alex's expression didn't change, but she saw his eyes narrow slightly. "Then prove it. You have until Monday's board meeting to convince us you deserve to be here. 3 days. 72 hours to prove she could run a multi-billion-dollar company when she'd spent the last decade scrubbing toilets." Maria spent Friday night doing what she'd always done, cleaning. Not because the office needed it, but because the familiar motion helped her think. She returned to Blackwood Industries at 6 p.m., pushed her old cleaning cart through the executive wing, and paid attention. The difference was, now she could act on what she saw. Victoria's office was a disaster. Wine bottles in the trash, unopened contracts on her desk, an email carelessly left on her monitor. "The Henderson merger will require 500 layoffs. Push it through before the cleaning lady takes over." 500 families destroyed so shareholders could see higher profits. Maria photographed the email and kept moving. Alex Sterling's office was different, meticulously organized. No personal photos, no mess. just files labeled with precision and a half-finished coffee that suggested he'd left in a hurry. She shouldn't snoop. She was the majority owner now. She could request files officially. But old habits died hard. Maria found a folder marked Santos, Contingency. Inside were documents prepared for Monday's board meeting, a psychiatric evaluation request, a competency hearing, a strategic plan to remove her within 30 days. Alex Sterling wasn't just opposing her, he was orchestrating her destruction. "What are you doing in my office?" Maria spun around. Alex stood in the doorway, still wearing his suit from earlier, looking exhausted and dangerous. His eyes dropped to the folder in her hands, and his expression hardened. "Breaking and entering?" He stepped inside, closing the door. "That's one way to prove you're not qualified." The door was open. "So you decided to read confidential files?" "I decided to understand what I'm facing." Maria held up the folder. "You're planning to have me declared mentally incompetent. That's your strategy?" "That's one option." Alex moved closer, and Maria's pulse kicked up. He was tall. She hadn't realized how tall when they'd been across a conference table, and he carried himself with the unconscious confidence of someone who'd never been told no. "The other is you recognize you're in over your head and step aside voluntarily. And if I don't, then Monday becomes very unpleasant for you." They stood too close in the quiet office. Maria could smell his cologne, expensive and subtle, could see the slight stubble on his jaw that suggested he'd been working late, could feel her body responding to his proximity in ways that were completely inappropriate given that he was trying to destroy her. "Why do you care so much?" Maria asked. "This isn't your company." "James Blackwood was my mentor. He hired me fresh out of business school when no one else would look past my family name. He taught me everything I know about leadership." Alex's voice roughened slightly. "And in his last months, he made a decision that will undo everything he built. So yes, I care. I care enough to fight you every step of the way." He knew what he was doing. He was dying and desperate and hoping for a miracle that doesn't exist. Alex took the folder from her hands, his fingers brushing hers. The contact lasted a second too long. "You seem like a good person, Maria, but good people don't necessarily make good CEOs." "Then give me a chance to prove otherwise." "Why should I?" Maria thought about the email on Victoria's desk, the 500 families about to lose their jobs, the company culture that valued profit over people. "Because James saw something in me that you're refusing to see. And maybe if you stopped looking at my resume and started paying attention to who I actually am, you'd understand why." She walked out of his office, leaving Alex standing alone with his contingency plans and his certainty that he was right. Monday morning arrived with the weight of execution day. Maria wore a simple black suit, professional without trying too hard, and carried a folder containing 10 years of observations. She'd barely slept, running scenarios until her eyes burned and her confidence crumbled. The boardroom filled with 12 powerful people who'd already decided she didn't belong. Alex Sterling sat at Victoria's right hand. He didn't look at Maria as she entered. "Let's begin," said Gregory Walsh, the senior board member. "We're here to discuss the viability of current leadership given Ms. Santos's lack of traditional qualifications." "I'd like to start," Victoria said, distributing packets. "These project the company's trajectory under unqualified leadership. Stock decline, client loss, revenue drop. Ms. Santos may have inherited this company, but that doesn't mean she should run it." The numbers were damning, the projections catastrophic. "Ms. Santos?" Gregory turned to her. "How do you respond?" Maria stood, heart hammering. This was it, her one chance. "You're right," she said quietly. "I don't have an MBA. I haven't run a company. I spent 10 years cleaning these offices while you made decisions worth millions." Victoria smiled, victory already certain. "But I saw things you didn't," Maria continued. "I saw executives leave confidential documents on their desks because they assumed the cleaning lady couldn't read. I saw waste and inefficiency you accepted as normal. I saw employees treated like disposable resources instead of valuable assets. She opened her folder. The Henderson merger Victoria wants to push through? It requires laying off 500 people to maximize profit. But I found an alternative analysis buried in operational files, a restructuring plan that achieves 70% of the merger benefits without destroying 500 families. She distributed copies. Several board members leaned forward, interested. The consulting contracts Richard Vance approved last year? I noticed the same invoices appearing monthly from companies with no web presence, no office locations, no employees. I thought it was strange. Turns out $12 million has been embezzled over 18 months. The room went silent. You're accusing the CFO of theft? Alex's voice was sharp, skeptical. I'm saying someone should investigate the pattern I noticed while emptying his trash. Maria met his eyes. Because invisible people see things powerful people miss. Gregory Walsh studied the documents. These consulting firms, we should verify their legitimacy. Already done, Maria said. I contacted 3 last week. None exist. Richard's been funneling money through fake vendors for over a year. This is conspiracy theory, Victoria protested. She's manufacturing crises to distract from her incompetence. Then we investigate, Gregory decided. If Ms. Santos is wrong, we'll know within days. But if she's right... He looked at Maria with new interest. Then perhaps James Blackwood saw exactly what he claimed to see. The investigation took 48 hours. Richard Vance was arrested on Wednesday morning, charged with embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. Federal investigators found evidence of financial crimes dating back 5 years. Stock prices didn't just recover, they surged. Investors who'd been terrified of the cleaning lady CEO now called her visionary. And Alex Sterling requested a private meeting. I owe you an apology. Alex stood in Maria's office, James Blackwood's old office, though she still couldn't think of it as hers, looking uncomfortable in a way that made him suddenly, devastatingly human. You were right, he continued. I looked at your resume instead of seeing who you actually were. I assumed incompetence because you didn't have credentials I recognized. And now? Now I'm trying to figure out how you saw what 3 external audits missed. He stepped closer, and Maria felt that electric pull again. How did you know about Richard? I noticed patterns, invoices that didn't quite make sense, meetings that happened off-calendar, conversations he had when he thought no one was listening. Maria held his gaze. Being invisible has advantages. People reveal truths when they think you can't understand them. You're remarkable. The words came out softer than Alex seemed to intend. I'm observant. There's a difference. No. He shook his head. You're remarkable. And I'm sorry I tried to have you removed before I bothered to understand what James saw in you. The air between them shifted, tension transforming into something warmer and more dangerous. The contingency plans? Maria asked. Shredded. Alex smiled, and it changed his entire face from severe to stunning. You're stuck with me now, as an ally instead of an enemy. I could use allies. Good, because Victoria's not done fighting. She's planning something bigger than board challenges or competency hearings. He pulled out his phone, showing her a text exchange. She's reaching out to competitors, offering insider information in exchange for help destabilizing your position. That's illegal, only if we can prove it. Alex's expression hardened. Which is why I'm proposing we work together. You have instincts, I have experience. Between us, we might actually save this company from Victoria's vendetta. Why would you help me? 2 days ago, you wanted me gone. 2 days ago, I thought protecting James's legacy meant maintaining traditional leadership. Alex moved closer, close enough that Maria could see gold flecks in his brown eyes. Now I think protecting his legacy means protecting the person he chose, even if she terrifies me. I terrify you? Absolutely. His voice dropped lower. You're brilliant without trying. You see patterns I miss. You care about people in ways that make me question every business decision I've ever made." He paused. "And you make me want to be better than I am." Maria's breath caught. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to prove herself professionally, not feel her heart race when her former opponent stood too close. "Alex!" "I'm not asking for anything," he interrupted. "I just wanted you to know. You're not alone in this fight, and if Victoria comes after you again, she'll have to go through me first." He left before Maria could respond, leaving her standing in an office that finally felt like it might be hers, with a heart that was definitely not following her professional judgment. 3 months later, Maria faced her biggest test yet: the Henderson merger, the deal that would increase revenue 40% but required 500 layoffs to achieve projected margins. The board was divided. Victoria, still on the board despite her reduced role, pushed hard for maximum profit. Alex argued for the restructuring plan Maria had proposed, the one that protected jobs at the cost of slightly lower returns. "We have a responsibility to shareholders," Victoria said coldly, "not to employees who are replaceable." "Employees aren't replaceable," Maria replied. "They're people with families and mortgages and children. They're the reason this company exists." "The company exists to generate profit." Victoria's smile was sharp. "Or did James not teach you that basic principle?" "He taught me that profit without purpose is just greed." Gregory Walsh cleared his throat. "Ms. Santos, you hold controlling shares. This decision is ultimately yours, but the board's recommendation will influence shareholder confidence. What do you want to do?" Maria looked at Alex. He nodded slightly. "Trust me," the gesture said. "I'm approving the merger," Maria said. "With the restructuring plan, 32% revenue increase, no layoffs, investment in training and equipment instead of cutting people to maximize margins." "The board will never support it," Victoria protested. "The board," Alex said quietly, "might surprise you." He'd been working behind the scenes, Maria realized, building support, convincing skeptical members that sustainable growth mattered more than quarterly earnings. The vote was 8-4 in favor of Maria's plan. Victoria walked out without a word. That evening, Alex found Maria alone in her office, staring at the city lights. "You won," he said, stepping inside and closing the door. "I made a choice. Winning suggests someone lost." Victoria lost. 500 families won. That's worth celebrating. He moved beside her at the window. "You're changing how this company operates, how the entire industry thinks about corporate responsibility. Or I'm delusional and this will collapse within a year." "You're not delusional." Alex turned to face her. "You're brave, you're principled, and you're the best thing that's happened to this company in decades." Maria looked at him. This man who'd tried to destroy her and now defended her. This Harvard MBA who'd learned to see value in unconventional leadership. This frustrating, brilliant, devastating person who'd somehow become essential to her survival. "Why are you really helping me?" she asked. "Because James was right about you. Because you make me want to be better. Because—" He stopped, seeming to wrestle with something. "Because somewhere between opposing you and defending you, I fell in love with who you are." The confession hung between them, terrifying and perfect. "Alex, I know it's complicated. You're the majority owner. I'm an executive. There's a power dynamic and professional ethics and 100 reasons this is a terrible idea." He stepped closer. "But I'm tired of pretending I don't feel this. I'm tired of treating you like a boss when what I really want is—" Maria kissed him. It was impulsive and unprofessional and absolutely perfect. His arms came around her, pulling her closer, and for a moment, the company and the board and the responsibilities disappeared into something simpler and more honest. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Alex rested his forehead against hers. "That was a terrible idea," Maria finished. "The worst. We can't do this. The scandal, if anyone found out, would destroy both of us," Alex agreed. Then he kissed her again, softer this time, like a promise. "We'll be careful. We'll be discreet. We'll figure it out. This is insane. Completely insane. He smiled against her lips. But so is a cleaning lady inheriting a billion-dollar company. Maybe insane is your brand. 6 months into Maria's tenure, Victoria made her final move. She'd been working with competitors, building a case that Maria's employee-first policies were unsustainable. She'd leaked confidential information to the press, planted stories about romantic impropriety between Maria and Alex, created a narrative of failure and scandal. The emergency board meeting was called for Friday afternoon. The company is thriving, Gregory Walsh noted, reviewing the reports. Revenue is up. Employee satisfaction is at record highs. Stock prices are climbing. What exactly is the crisis? The crisis, Victoria said, standing, is that Maria Santos is sleeping with Alex Sterling and using her position to benefit him professionally. The room went silent. Maria felt ice flood her veins. They'd been so careful. Private meetings only in public spaces, no physical contact at work, separate cars, separate entrances, complete discretion. But Victoria had found out anyway. "That's a serious accusation," Gregory said. "Can you prove it?" Victoria pulled out photographs. Maria and Alex having dinner at an out-of-town restaurant, leaving her apartment building together early one morning, standing too close outside a conference room. Nothing explicitly inappropriate, but damning in context. "She's abusing her power," Victoria continued, "using her inherited position to conduct an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate executive. It's unethical. It's potentially illegal. And it proves James's judgment was impaired when he chose her." Maria looked at Alex. His expression was carefully neutral, but she saw the calculation behind his eyes. He was preparing to fall on his sword, to resign and claim he'd pursued her inappropriately, to protect her at the cost of his own career. She couldn't let him do that. "You're right," Maria said quietly. Every head turned toward her. "Alex and I are involved. We tried to keep it private. We tried to maintain professional boundaries. But yes, Victoria's right about the relationship." "Maria," Alex started. "I'm not finished." She stood, meeting each board member's eyes. "When I inherited this company, I didn't expect to fall in love with someone who initially tried to have me removed. I didn't plan for Alex Sterling to become the person I trust most, who challenges my assumptions, who makes me a better leader." She pulled documents from her folder. "But I also didn't let that relationship compromise my judgment. Every decision I've made has been vetted by the full board. Every promotion, including Alex's raise last quarter, was approved by independent review. I've maintained firewalls specifically to prevent favoritism." She handed copies to Gregory Walsh. "These are communications between me and the board ethics committee. I disclosed the relationship 2 months ago. I requested independent oversight of any decisions involving Alex. I've followed every protocol designed to prevent exactly what Victoria's accusing me of." Victoria's confident expression faltered. "You disclosed?" Gregory reviewed the documents. "I wasn't informed." The ethics committee maintained confidentiality pending their review. They concluded last week that appropriate safeguards were in place. Maria looked at Victoria. "I learned something from 10 years of being invisible. Transparency prevents scandal. Honesty prevents manipulation. I'm not hiding this relationship because I know it's been handled ethically." "She's still sleeping with a subordinate," Victoria insisted. "Alex Sterling is a VP. I'm the majority shareholder. There's no direct reporting relationship." Maria's voice hardened. "But if the board believes this creates impropriety despite ethical safeguards, I'll accept consequences. The question is whether you're judging me on actual misconduct or on Victoria's vendetta." Gregory Walsh looked at the other board members. Some unspoken communication passed between them. "The ethics committee cleared you," he said finally. "You maintained appropriate oversight. You disclosed the relationship proactively." He turned to Victoria. "This isn't scandal. This is someone being more ethical than required. Your accusation fails." Victoria stood abruptly. "You're all enabling this farce because you're too cowardly." "I'm resigning," Victoria interrupted herself, seeming to realize she'd lost. "Not because of this board. Because watching a cleaning lady succeed where I would have failed is more than I can endure." She walked out for the last time. After the meeting ended, Alex found Maria alone in her office. "You protected me," he said. "You could have thrown me under the bus, claimed I pursued you, saved yourself." "I could never do that to you." "Why not?" Maria smiled. "Because somewhere between opposing me and defending me, I fell in love with who you are." He laughed, pulling her close. "We're really doing this? Openly?" "We're really doing this." She kissed him softly. "No more hiding, no more pretending. Just two people who probably shouldn't work but somehow do. The board will talk. Let them talk. I've spent 10 years being invisible. I'm done hiding any part of who I am." 1 year after inheriting Blackwood Industries, Maria Santos stood before the company's 5,000 employees at the annual meeting. Stock prices were at record highs, revenue had grown 40%, employee satisfaction scores had never been better. The business model she'd championed, prioritizing sustainable growth over maximum profit, was being studied by MBA programs worldwide. But more importantly, the company culture had changed. Cleaning staff were now invited to quarterly meetings. Entry-level employees had clear advancement paths. Executive compensation was tied to employee satisfaction as well as financial performance. "A year ago," Maria began, "I inherited something impossible, a company I wasn't qualified to run, a responsibility I didn't ask for, opposition from people who believed I didn't deserve to be here." She paused, looking at the audience, at employees who'd once ignored her, at executives who'd tried to remove her, at Alex, standing in the front row, smiling with pride and love. "But James Blackwood taught me something. Qualification isn't about credentials. It's about character. It's about seeing people as humans rather than resources. It's about believing that caring isn't weakness. It's the foundation of real leadership." The applause was genuine, sustained, powerful. After the meeting, Alex found her backstage. "Still terrified?" he asked, pulling her close. "Absolutely," Maria kissed him. "But I'm getting better at being scared and saying it anyway. That's called courage. That's called having someone beside me who believes I can do impossible things." "Always," Alex promised. "Even when the impossible thing is loving someone who keeps proving she's more qualified than anyone gave her credit for." Maria had spent 10 years being invisible. Now she was unforgettable. And somewhere, James Blackwood was smiling. Maria Santos went from cleaning offices to running a billion-dollar empire. But more importantly, she went from being invisible to being seen, not just by the company she now led, but by the man who'd opposed her and ended up falling in love with her strength. Her story proves that the person everyone underestimates might be exactly the person everyone needs. That credentials matter less than character. That love can grow in the most unexpected places, between the most unlikely people. If this story touched you, drop a comment telling me, have you ever felt invisible? Have you ever had someone believe in you when no one else did? I read every comment, and your stories inspire everything we create here. Subscribe for more stories about people who defied expectations and found love in unexpected places. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that might change how you see the world. Remember, the person cleaning your office, serving your coffee, doing the invisible work, they might be remarkable in ways you'll never know unless you pay attention. Thanks for watching Maria's story. Until next time, remember that being seen is powerful. But sometimes, being invisible teaches you everything you need to know to change the world.